Hi, I'm Peter Holland, and welcome very much to the Scottish Rum Festival. We've got Craig here from Askival. Am I saying that correctly?
Yeah, indeed. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for joining us. What's your role at the company?
So I'm head of production for the rum. I created it.
You're actually making it. So yeah, so even more important, thank you for taking time out. Obviously, not too much, so we needed to get back to making more, obviously. But
Yeah, yeah.
So we got the little slots here just so that the folks can enjoy these tastings and interviews at their leisure, separate to the main stage. Events are on the Friday and Saturday. But opportunity, tell us all about it. What's your background in rum? What on earth drove you to the crazy notion of setting up a company to make a rum?
So start. I guess so. From my own perspective, yeah. I guess basically the best way to go about it is start where and how the boys came up with the idea, or the thought, or the notion. So basically, my three partners, Ali, Josh, and Fergus, they are all team on racing yachts, sailing yachts. So they basically were driving by the Isle of Rum, having a conversation, and said, "I wonder if anyone's done a rum from rum." And so they got back to the mainland, did a bit of research, and a couple of people had tried to trademark it, but never quite pulled it off. Potentially because it's logistically insane to attempt something of the likes on a 30 people populated island that has very badly maintained roads. Anyway, so when I say roads, I mean kind of tracks that have been made by constant things driven over the top of them. There's actually no man power involved in these roads. So basically, this was in the summer of 2019. I am a chef by trade, but have my business, Falican, has been heavily involved in the drinks world also. We connect, my business heavily connects with sort of drinks, wild Scottish produce, foragers, bartenders, other chefs. We're a very much community driven business. And I was doing consultancy on a restaurant in Glasgow, overseeing it. And there was a great coffee shop next door that I used to stop into on the way to so I'd leave there and then I'd jump in, grab myself a coffee. There's a girl working there, Kate, and she's very chatty, very nice girl, and she was asking where I was going that day, and I said, well, I'm actually off to Islay because I work and have worked with Bruichladdich and the Botanist for the last sort of the large percentage of the time my business has existed, and we worked sort of tied in with them from a point of view of we do private dinners, but we also wrote some nice little online articles on the plant families, the compounds, the flavors of the wild plants of Scotland, the wild plants of Islay, the wild plants that are used in the Botanist gin. So I, a lot of the time, numerous times brought friends over to the island, introduced a forager called Mark Williams to the Botanist gin. Mark's probably at the forefront of foraging in Britain, up there, definitely at the top tier of them. Knowledgeable guy, but also a very good friend of mine, and we've developed our friendship over the years. And so we kind of, between us, Mark taught me, I knew a fair bit about the wild plants of Scotland, and I guess, the wild plants of Scotland aren't just indigenous to Scotland. You do get them in North America or Europe and so on, but there's a lot to know and a lot to learn, and I kind of pursued that. So that was the thing I'd sort of that's why I was going to Islay to work with the gin. I think that week I was cooking with them. Some weeks we hosted foragers, bartenders, and so on. So quite a connection to the drinks world anyway. Yeah. And Kate said, would you be able to, would you be interested in chatting to my partner Josh? He's thinking of setting up a rum company. We met and had a coffee in said coffee shop, and we kind of came to the conclusion. I said, I know how they sort of and I know how everything's made for the gin. I have an understanding of how it's introduced to the gin and how the spirit itself is flavored with the wild botanicals. And this is something that and it's not quite the same. We don't quite do it in the same way as the gin do. We do it slightly different, but it's the principle, and it's understanding the wild plants, and it's understanding what happens, what the chemical compounds and the flavors develop in a strong alcoholic solution, how they'll taste, when to not take them too far. So I guess that's why I said, I can help you guys develop this if you were interested. And that was the way the conversation, I guess, was probably going. So this was fast forward January 2020. We finally got to meet with all the January or February, I can't remember. Finally got to meet with all the lads. At this point, I'd had a quite strong heads up from one of my associates, or one of my friends, who's a director of the gin and the whiskey, that the world was potentially about to close down because 40% of their business is in Asia. So I was about to meet these guys, and it was like, right, well, God knows what it is. I'd literally had a phone call just before going to meet them saying, by the way, everything that we have got for you for the next foreseeable 8 months has been cancelled. So all my business with on Isla had been cancelled at that point. And I was just like, I kind of had figured it because they'd already pre-warned me. They'd said, look, this is potentially how it is. But this was kind of before it exploded in the news. At that point, people were like, what's all the fuss about? And I was like, I think we probably should just like duck and cover right now, to be honest with you. But so met the lads, chatted, had a few, I think we actually met at the Rum Shack, and then, had a couple of pints and chatted over it. And at that point, they got me some 65% rum, a blend that they'd they tried a few blends, but we came to our own sort of thoughts on which was the right blend, and then from that, I kind of throughout lockdown dipped in and out. It was a 65% proof, so like, all joking apart, I mean, you were pretty much pissed by the time you'd kind of tried one or two. So the journey of the journey on the palate had to be sort of there's only so far you can go, and it was just unless you're out to get pissed, which I wasn't. I was out to try and box off the flavors that were going on. So yeah, that was the beginnings of how I got involved in it, and then I developed it over lockdown, and I think we were finally able to meet in maybe June, I think it was, and show them the sort of finished product that I'd kind of put together in Kilner jars in my home kitchen, and that was how it developed. And I based it all upon, there's a whole rhythm to it, sort of thing, that I kind of thought certain things stood out more and so on. So that's how I got involved in it. At the beginning, and where, that's kind of where I got involved in it. Yeah.
So you got a couple of things we got from that is one that, and it also says in your nasty little information booklet, that you have a Caribbean rum base. So the first botanical is the rum itself.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then it's about layering flavors on top of.
Yeah, exactly. And so what I did was I worked. I've tasted a lot of amazing whiskies over the years, and I'm 23 years cooking, and you're, as a chef, you live and die by what's on your nose and what's on your palate. So you have a database in your mind of memories and thoughts and flavors and smells. So whenever you smell something, quite within probably about 0.5 a second, you have a connection in your head as a cook. So you just go, I'm getting that. So that was sort of that was where we started. And to talk through the flavors of the rum, there's a lot of things that you'll get from it, but for me there were certain notes I wanted up front, and I wanted to play with. So when I started tasting it, you get your classic vanilla from the vanilla in the barrels and so on. You get slight cellar type smells and flavors, kind of a little bit of like caramelly, dark caramelly, maybe salt caramel. But now you do definitely get salt caramel because of the introduction of the seaweed, but slight caramel notes, kind of popcorny notes, you know, and that was what I was starting to get from it at the beginning. So that was one of the leading notes. And then moving on to that, I kind of sort of, to go with that slight bitterness and maybe sassafras root beer flavor that sometimes occurs via other things. I kind of introduced another flavor. I was getting notes of that and deeper flavors, and I thought a bit of chocolatiness I wanted to just emphasize there as well. And I'll go back to these and tell you what the things were that I did these, but I'll go through the tasting with it. And then I went into you know, I was getting a sort of zesty burnt orangey thing going on, so like definitely a kind of citrus fruit, and maybe not the more acidic ones, maybe the slightly sweeter ones, so I was getting that. And then there were, I guess, your classic, you know, without spices being added, you do get spice notes of certain distilled spirits, as we all know. So kind of gingery, warm, ham, almost Middle Eastern thing going on that you would get. And then again, that slightly Christmassy spice, a kind of clovey spice that was I could get, I was getting a slightly herbaceous, vegetal, slightly fruity, mentholy thing going on as well. So that was how I worked through it. That's and each time, which I had to keep going back to, I was using what I'd for my own palate, the own kind of, you know, all the sort of filing cabinets in my head of flavor. I was kind of, you know, there's very basic ones, and you can start to get a bit more technical. There's a lot more notes than I'm telling you. There was a page of, I did it at 65%, tasted it, and then I tried it at 45, and I you know, I did the calculation, loosened it water, took it to 45. So I did a lot of, so this is to compound it into sort of like the flavors I took eventually and rolled with. So we went to when I was getting these classic sort of rum notes, you kind of vanilla and so on. We don't have vanilla in this country, but we do have an amazing plant that's part of the rose family called meadowsweet. And that is on the nose, summer. Coumarin is the flavor compound there that you will get of hay, vanilla. You do have that note there, woodruff and so on. So to me, from a point of, they call it Reine de Pré in France, Queen of the meadows, you know, Queen of the fields, because it's everywhere, you know.
Yeah.
And for me, I thought that'd be a great one to introduce. Then I deliberated. I thought, do I use it fresh? Do I use it dry? Things can be a bit more robust when they're dry if you want them to be used for that reason. So there was the kind of popcorny notes that you will get coming through from that, vanilla, slight summer notes of, you know, grass and sort of hay and so on. So that's why the meadowsweet is there. So I'll kind of go through why they're there, then I'll go back to the reasons that they're also there from a geographical point of view as well. So then we, moving on to, for me, I just wanted that, I do love the sort of Islay kind of whiskey sort of side of things. And, you know, when there's a kind of evaporation in the summer months of the gases that come from the seaweeds, there's this kind of saline quality that's absorbed into the casks that comes from the seaweeds, you know. So to me, it was a no-brainer. There was kelp everywhere around, so let's get kelp in there, roast it, and that's all timed, and it's a recipe, you know. So we're not just like going, hey, and you know, we've got that timed, we've got that dried at the perfect temperature so that it doesn't go bitter. Using a dehydrator, and then we roast it, and then we infuse it, and also you get a deep flavor that you would get off almost you know, a kind of malt, a maltiness almost that comes with that. Again, we took the spruce, which is, there's a big old spruce tree right next to the byre, so we were like, right, well, and we thought let's use some of that. It's everywhere, you know. And the different pine trees have different notes. So Douglas fir and spruce, most definitely. Fir can be a bit more grapefruity, almost mango sometimes. Spruce can be a bit more limey or almost going into orangey. So to me, the zestiness that comes from pinene and limonene. So pinene is that kind of thing that you'll get the piney smell. Limonene is the also prevalent in pine trees, but it's also in citrus fruit. So to me, it was a connection to that orange that made sense in a lot of ways. Those are the ones that we have up front and in the tasting. Then we move into hogweed seeds, not giant hogweed, common hogweed. Do not go near giant hogweed, everybody. Common hogweed. But yeah, the giant one is just it has a compound in the sort of sap, and it makes it not easy to say this when you're pissed, but photophytotoxic. So basically, you can get burned by the sap. If sap touches you and then you go into sunlight, it'll burn you and blister. If you don't go in sunlight, it doesn't. But so that's the larger ones. The smaller one can do this certain times of the year, but when we pick it, it's just the seeds we use. They're dried, and then they give a real burnt orange, sort of gingery Middle Eastern hum is the way in my mind how common hogweed is. And then we have I think of wood avens, and we use the root of wood avens. Again, that's actually a member of the rose family. The rose family is phenomenal. There's so many things that we use in it that we just don't even acknowledge. So the almonds come from there, plums come from there. You could go on forever, but there's a lot of them. So anyway, the wood avens, this is quite interesting because the root of it has the same compound that cloves have. So you get this clove compound sort of going on. So that is in there, which you'll pick up. And then there's also, so we have the hogweed, the wood avens, and they're there for the as I said, the kind of warm Middle Eastern, or the spice notes that you would get classically. And then for that, as I mentioned in the past, vegetal, menthol, herbaceous. Often there's a plant I work with called flowering currant, and it's a currant family, cassis family, if you want to go down the Latin road. But we know cassis from the liqueur of course, but cassis family. So basically, the flowering currant is in there. When you pick it, you do get that same family. Sometimes I get on the nose the mint family. So that family has members such as oregano, thyme, and so on. So mint, oregano, thyme. To me, that made sense to use the flowering currant, but it just gives a lovely fruitiness that you do sometimes find in rums. So that's why that's there. Then for a bit of romance, a story is always good. It just the stars aligned a bit in this one because Askival itself is, that part of Scotland was very much Norway at one point of our existence, and run by the Norsemen and so on. So a lot of names there that are Old Norse, and Askival itself is Old Norse for ash tree mountain. Ash is the ash family is the rowan family, but I guess it hasn't got too many rowan trees on now, but Askival is ash tree mountain in Norse, So nice tie in there. Island was excavated. Some old sort of ceramics were found that were for mead, and there was the meadowsweet was found that they used for the mead. So they would use things like elderflower, meadowsweet, things like that, and so the meadowsweet has a nice wee place in there. The kelp in Napoleonic times, it was so they farmed the kelp and they used it for nitrates. The nitrates went then on to make cannonballs for the Napoleonic War. So a little bit of that added in there for not just because it's delicious in flavor, but a little bit of a story there. And then it was one of the largest reforestation projects of its time on the island. So the island's quite desolate, but this guy George Bullows, who has a big old weird castle on, had a big old weird sort of 18th going into 19th century castle on Rum. He kind of reforested the whole area where the byre is. So that's where the spruce is, and that's where it would have came from. So there's a little bit. So there's that's our kind of, yeah. That's
a heck of a story. I'm loving it.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah. So we're just a lot there to work on. Getting things back to normal with COVID, but that's where we are just now with it,
That's brilliant. So I mean, all the botanicals just to come are entirely sourced from the island or from Scotland in general.
Yeah, exactly. So we get within sustainable and mindful sort of picking, we get what we can.
Yep.
And it will grow back. Some of these are perennials and they'll come back and so on. But we also do it on the mainland, just because Scotland's so abundant with all these plants. It's good to have the most, the sort of the most important thing was to make sure that those were flavors and memories of the island at the same time as flavors, and kind of a little bit of history there. So, but yeah, that's the honest truth is we have to go to the mainland as well, because you got to be sure that they're going to come back the next year. So you have to pick them sustainably. And you can still get, it's not entirely small. You can still get what you need to, but you just got to be aware. I mean, I think what people forget is, you see a lot of wild things that we look at that most people probably think are weeds or whatever, if they do get hammered, there's a spot I used to go for wild garlic, and it's now everybody knows. I think they sell wild garlic in Waitrose in London these days, and spruce tips and all sorts. So if everyone knows about it now, so it gets hammered. So you kind of got to just be mindful of your picking, really, and make sure you've got permission and so on. But which we do, but it's just that's the practicalities of it.
We've had I honestly, it was the connections, the mental connections. I don't think I've ever heard that flavor journey described quite the way it has done. It's obviously you've got a passion for this thing. It's not unusual for people to sort of say, well, we've got local botanicals, for the area, but then that's based on the fact that there will be predominantly commonplace ones that have come from around the world. So in the case of this one, entirely local, and I have to say that, because I've held on to this, I didn't try the rum until I'm here listening to it. I didn't go before, but there is a beautiful harmony. It's almost tricky to pick individuals out because of the harmony between everything that's working. There is that rum base is obviously there as well. So it's kind of like every little bit sort of dialed up a bit. So it's quite quirky. Is not the right word, but the flavors take you in all sort of directions.
Yeah, and dialed up a bit is the perfect description, because that was my intention. It was about I gave it to a well-known distributor in the East Coast, and he sort of got back and he said, congratulations, it's still very much a rum. But and I think that's potentially, I kind of thought about it like I would maybe a bit of a really good carrot or a very good bit of lamb, like work with that, let it source the best and let it do the talking.
Yeah.
But complement it with a couple of extra things. And I think that's what I kept into mind, and was very, to give you an example, when I first started compounding in the flat here, I was playing with each one. So I was playing with each individual rum compound and each individual wild sort of tincture. And I would time it. So I would set a 15-minute timer, and I'd be doing something else. And then I would have the botanical would be in there, and I would taste it. Because with botanicals, what happens is there's certain ones, for example, if you go down the flowering currant route, it can go up, and then it can start to get bitter and nasty and chemically and so on. So that's what can happen with green, verdant, herbaceous notes. Floral can go up and be bright and summery, and then get muddy and it's just a bit rank. So you kind of have to have to work on it, as I say. So each one was taken apart, and then I thought, right, well, let's try to harmonize this like a good classical sauce. Make sure there's harmony there, and a bit of acidity and a bit of depth and a bit of base, but a bit of brightness, a bit of herbal. But I just kind of tried to do the same thing with with the compounding, you know, and I'm glad you noticed that, because that is what I aimed for, is the kind of the dialing up of each individual, and it is still a rum, you know.
Yes, it is quite noticeably so. It's is there a little sweetness to it? Does that come from the infusions, or is there a little sugar in there?
Sweetness, there is honey in there also.
Honey.
So yeah, just a very small percentage, just to
it out as well.
We wanted to use something that was also like from these shores, so to speak. So yes. You know, like there's obviously what's the best way to put it? I guess, like, you know, hardcore, you know, you could say molasses, sugar, and so on. But you know, just the key thing is that there's very similar notes in meadowsweet and honey, so they will harmonize as well, you know. And I think that was
glad I got a second dram, to be fair. I kind of like that first 30 ml went down far too easily. It drinks beautifully neat. I mean, do you anticipate people mixing this, or?
Yeah, so to sort of give you a sort of to touch on that, you know, when I made it, I kind of, I've got really, you know, quite a lot of connections in the bar world, and I thought, and I had open discussions with them and chatted with them, and you know, thought about percentages and thought about things that, you know, were important. And I thought, you know, at the end of the day, we want to be a viable business, so we want to suit everybody. So what we did, well, what I did was I thought, right, well, I want this to be a sipper. I want to remind me of a good, you know, whiskey that you can just sit and sip, and you can loosen off a little bit if you want to. There's no hard set rules. It'll take a bit of water after the 45%, you know, that's fine. It's got those kind of lighter notes as well, that when you do add ice to it, it becomes a bit of a cleaner thing. And then if you want to, you know, we do sort of recommend ginger ale. That would be, you know, just because it works well and it's still quite clean, you know.
Yes.
There's no point in, you know, when you're going to go to a national and then maybe one day an international clientele and audience, you don't really want to get all silly with tall mixers, you know. You just want to do something that's going to complement it. So, but then, you know, I played about a bit, and I've got some very very well-known chaps in the bar world putting together some interesting combinations that are also very, very viable from a B2C point of view. And I'm very lucky to have them doing it. So we'll have a nice little booklet there of these. They're in the process right now. So I wanted it to be something that my pals already put together. Abby Clefane, who's the ambassador for Brookladden and the Botanist, she's put together a Dreeken Stormy for us. So it does lend it. I've put together a kind of pine daiquiri, which I did want it to lend itself to clean, light things, but it was the first time I did it. And because you got the kelp in there, it actually lifts clean, light flavors. So they get dialed up as well. So you've got a dialing up of what's in it already. And then when you add to it, it does another thing. So when I made the daiquiri, I kind of, instead of a sort of a gum syrup, I had a Scots pine kind of, I don't know how to explain it, but I guess it's like a syrup. It goes bright red, but I used that instead of the gum, and I used a bit of grapefruit, because that made sense to me from the sort of the zestiness. But it really lifted it, and it was clean, and it was like, oh, this is, you know, it was like, oh, this is, and I was like, good. So I kind of had all these intentions, but even though I had them, until you see them in play, then, and you know, but it will lend itself to a kind of more sort of Manhattan style. It'll go across the board, and that's been tried and tested now, you know.
I'm just thinking exactly that Manhattan style serve, but with you have to get the right vermouth, I think, to kind of to allow, not over. But
I think so, and you know, you could play with different ones, I think, and most definitely sort of, and not over. But I'm quite happy so far. We've got a treacle's getting worked on by just now from somebody, and so on, and that'll be exciting. And we're going to hopefully do I'm trying to remember the exact dates, but we're going to try and do a bit of a London launch at our friend's bar in London, which is was called Dandelion and was #1 bar for many a couple of years. And then they have this thing where they change it up, and it's now called Lioness. And Ryan himself was at the kind of forefront of. He was one of the first guys to get rid of ice and lemon on the bar and have pre-made cocktails. So we'll be down there. I think it's the. I'm just trying to remember what date we're going into there. August the 15th. So those guys are like mavericks at what they do from cocktails. So I genuinely can't wait to see what they're going to pull out the bag, because it's going to be fun, and they're going to probably hit up about 6 individual cocktails. So we'll see. That'll give us more of an idea of where we can go with this. And it's just we've been getting the business off the ground. And I think people realizing that you can use it for different things, and it being approachable as a neat sipper.
Yeah, it drinks very easily on its own, but I can imagine it will work very nicely. It is it's with each sip you kind of find another little element, and it sort of builds and presents.
Yeah. Good.
Thank you, man.
Well, I'm really glad that you're picking these things up, and that's the important thing, is that you pick up on these things. And it wasn't, it was very much, obviously many years in the food and drink industry, but the last 8 have probably been really, influential on my palate. So you'll get that slight Isla style salinity off that, and a bit of almost a depth, but without that kind of scary whiskey side to it, that some people find a bit sort of daunting at the beginning. But actually, once you have a really good whiskey, it's one of the greatest things. And that's, I wanted people to be, and a lot of people have it. I introduced it to a few folk in a gig I was doing down in London a couple of weeks back, and they were like, wow, I didn't really like rum before, but and so I think that's what's quite nice, is that we've kind of opened the doors to a few folks so far, and they're coming back for more.
Yeah, we have a part of my drive is to kind of separate rum and anything that's been flavored, to treat it as a separate process. It's a different thing.
Yeah,
when you are adding flavors to it, you're doing it for a reason, rather than, well, hopefully you're not trying to pass it off as like, this is authentic rum and you've just stuck a load of stuff in it.
Absolutely.
And it's interesting once you talk about the flavoring, that is that you could, with some botanicals and flavors are so extremely flavored, and yet this is subtle. It's not the right word, because it's there, and it's there, but it doesn't smack you in the face. It's something, honestly, it's a very I'm gushing a little bit here, I'm trying not to. It was it's a very well put together product. So I'm quite excited about that. It is, I know that you're going to put that in the glass for some people, and they'll drink it and they won't necessarily know that it's a botanical rum either. I think they could quite happily accept that it is what it is. It makes me interested to know what the base was like, to be fair, before you started working on it.
Say that again, sorry.
What the actual base spirit was. I mean, it was a Caribbean blend, is the way it's described in the book, but without any kind of indication of the islands that form that blend.
Yeah, well, we do have that now, like, and hopefully we'll remain with the same ones that we're going to be in, because we can't really change it. Jamaican and Barbadian so far, but this is the one product we're going to work with. And when I say change, maybe move on to other things. But I don't think just now we're just focusing on that one product coming from, like, what I think there's no point in just going, cool, that one's done. I just want to really, all our hard work should be now on screaming about it to the world and letting the world know about it, so, and obviously there's certain things that come from certain islands, certain places, but the key to us was like that base spirit, really breaking down the flavor notes of that and trying to work out how to transfer that to a Scottish botanical sort of meeting in the middle. And as I'm glad that you do say it's still a rum, and it's still, that's and there is those classic notes you do get in rum. So it was, you could say that some of the things I've used were in reference to quite a lot of rums. If you have a good sort of single estate or whatever, you can find those slightly, but even those can be sort of quite extreme depending on their ages and so on. So, it's just, and it was picking the right blend. And I think, people would maybe say, well, is it a Scottish rum? And it's like, well, what are gins?
You've literally just hit the kind of part of what we're trying to do with this, or part of what I'm trying to get out of it. And it's not to trap anyone or whatever, like, but if people, are you claiming it's a Scottish rum, or are you claiming a brand? In the case of this one, you've taken that base, but everything that's added to it is absolutely Scottish. It's like, it's a thing, and so that's where the connection is made, and it works.
Yeah, and I think that is the honest, working at, being honest, being transparent, and saying, well, it's definitely a Scottish. It's a Scottish-based project that is using a spirit from elsewhere. But as I said, what is gin?
Well, yeah.
And what is a Scottish gin? So that's that's kind of me being slightly rhetorical on that, but it's, and as you say, I appreciate that. It's like it's given it it's being transparent and being like, well, this is what we, we're not saying we're anything apart from I guess just now it is now in its new form a kind of rum from rum. So
I think I'm surprised that it hasn't been done before. So well done on being the first.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that. I think a few people had definitely contemplated it, but I think we were just quite insane enough to maybe logistically deal with it. Like it's I think when I saw we're literally in a sort of horseshoe shaped cow byre. This it's probably a couple of 100 years old, and it's amazing the place it's getting made in, and it's got a lot of work to be done in it, but right now it is pretty much a barn. But it's there's a great history. There's an old there's a forge next to it that we hope to kind of turn into our kind of boardroom and entertaining room, and it's still got billows there. I mean, huge billows, and the forge, the actual fire, it's all there, and we'll redo that when we build up, and we will eventually, the aim is to eventually distill, and we'll use all our resources and contacts and network, and we will eventually go down that road. It's just like other companies, this is our starting point, and again, to me, the most important thing always is you can split hairs over everything, but it's like what either arrives in your glass or what arrives in your plate. The most important thing is that it's something people enjoy, and it's something that's tasty, whether that's in a glass or on a plate. And if it's I think that's to us was like, we want it to appeal to people first and foremost, and want it to be a viable product to the B2C and the B2B side of things, so I think that was what we aim to do, and hopefully that's where we are with it, so.
Wonderful. So it sounds like, you said it before, we're in the process of launching. We can buy direct from the website.
Buy direct from the Askival website.
Yeah, and
Askival.
Hopefully the tech people can put it up on the screen for us.
Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah, we can do that, and we same on Instagram. Askival Rum, and you can get it from us, and we'll we're just, you buy directly from us, but we're in the process of putting together. We've got a phenomenal bunch of sort of people that are distributing it from shops now, from well-known spots. So you can we will have that eventually on the website as well. But it's been the last few months just been a bit of a hurricane. So it's like, and trying to get it all, and myself, I also run another business, so it's a bit like trying to juggle all the balls. But life would be like it was in lockdown if we weren't juggling all the balls. So. Yeah.
I think we're hopefully the world's going to start opening up over the next few months, and we can you'll be able to get out to bars, and people can start playing with this a little bit more freely as well.
Yeah, well, that's it, and that's the thing. We'll be a bit more into bars, and it's there to purchase just now for anybody that wants to try it. So
it's wonderful. I think that was fantastic. Thank you very much. I think that was this morning. I know this it's going to come out completely out of sync when we talk about it, but like this morning, I've had 3 interviews, and they've all been completely different. And if that doesn't sum up the absolute excitement that I have of the Scottish rum scene, then I don't know what does. I think it's been very, very cool. So thank you very much for your time.
Amazing. Well, thanks for being so supportive, and I'm really glad you picked up on what's going on with with the drink itself, you know.
I'm looking forward to sipping a bit more in future. Brilliant.
Excellent.
Right.
Lovely to meet
Cheers,
you.
then.
Take it easy.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye bye.